Did you know that Yellowstone is not the only national park with geothermal features?
Here in Northern California, Lassen Volcanic has fumaroles, hot springs, mud pots, and geysers, plus 4 different types of volcanoes can be found here.
So come along as we explore it together.
Welcome to 51 Parks with the Newstates. We're Howard and Katelyn, and we're on a mission to visit all the U.S. national parks in the lower 48 in our Winnebago RV. Each week, we're sharing where to stay, what to do, and introducing you to the people doing incredible work across our national parks. Well, good morning from Lassen Volcanic National Park. Neither one of us had really heard of this park before we started doing research for this series. And we got to our campground last night. We're at Manzanita Lake, which is on the north side. And we're gonna head all the way to the south to the visitor center there, work our way back up. We're just excited to dive in and learn more. This hidden gem of a national park is located about 200 miles north of Sacramento, California. It's a relatively small park with one road through the main section. This is where we'll be focusing for today's episode. There are several campgrounds inside the park as well as cabins at the Manzanita Lake area. There's a gas station inside the park in the north as well as a camp store for basic supplies and groceries. The campground itself has a mix of tent and RV sites, all of which are dry camping, but there is a dump station and freshwater fill near the entrance. Manzanita Lake is a beautiful area with views of Lassen Peak, the namesake volcano here in the park. There's a flat nature trail that takes you around the lake where you can get stunning views of the iconic volcano. Even though the main park road is only about 28 miles, it takes close to an hour to drive from north to south and reach the main Comyamani Visitor Center. Howard, what do you think about the landscape driving down here?
Oh, like first impressions?
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I was surprised how high we went too, because didn't we go up to like 9,000 feet?
85?
85. Wow. Yeah. There's beautiful alpine lakes. We went through at least one geothermal area. Yeah, it's amazing.
This was a very, very successful stop at the Visitor Center. We learned a lot. We have an entire game plan. We also got to attend a ranger chat where we learned even more about the park, and we got to watch the park film, which we always recommend doing. They're usually about 20 minutes and run like twice an hour, and it just gives you a really good foundation and history of the park. Because we knew very little about this park, I feel like we are much more armed now with great information and what makes Lassen Volcanic National Park so special. For example, there are all 4 types of volcanoes here, which I had no idea about.
I'm Ranger Orville. I've been a ranger for about 5 months, but I've been volunteering with the National Park Service since July of last year. I've been at 3 different parks, starting with Gateway Arch National Park. From there, I went to Jackson National Fish Hatchery at Grand Teton National Park. And from there, I came out here and was finally hired on as a proper ranger. It's a pretty cool job. I like it a lot.
What would you tell somebody who's on the fence about coming here?
Volcanoes! There aren't a lot of places in the United States that you can see volcanoes, and this is the only place in the United States where you can see all 4 types of volcanoes. Composite, which are made up of multiple types of eruptions happening in one spot over and over again, such as Mount Tehama, where we are in the middle of right now. Then we have plug domes, such as Lassen Peak itself. Their magma has a high silica content, so it's a lot more thick, has like the consistency of peanut butter when it's oozing, and it creates a lot more pressure, so they have more explosive eruptions. Then we have cinder cones, which have a very fluid, low silica content magma. They spew tons of ashes straight up in the air and create just a big pile of ash. And then we have shield volcanoes, which are another low silica type, but there's not a lot of ash coming out of those eruptions, and the volcanoes have a large, wide footprint. If we look around us, every mountain that we see here is volcanic in origin, and that makes up the entire Cascade Range. From here, all the way up into Washington and a little bit of Canada. This is one of the more active volcanic centers in the Cascade Range, so that's why we have those geothermal areas, such as at Sulfur Works and Bumpus Hell. These mountains around us, Diamonds Peak, Pilot Point, Mount Diller, Brokoff, and Conard over that way, are all the remnants of Mount Tehama, forming one giant volcano that has eroded away over the last 200,000 years. Sulfur Works 1 mile north of here is what the geologists say was likely the volcanic center where the funnel was. I absolutely love getting to talk to folks from all over the world that come here, because I really feel that the parks are the pride of America. This is a beautiful country. Places like Lassen are absolute marvels of ecology and nature, and it's great getting to show off this pride to people from all over the world.
Well, you know how much we love our audio tours, and unfortunately, there's not one from Guide Along or any of the other sources that we typically use, but I was looking through the National Park Service app, which is free, by the way, and they have an audio tour built in for Lassen Volcanic and the main park road. It is totally free, but what you do need to do, because the connectivity is very poor, meaning there's almost no cell service throughout this park, you need to download the park, and you can do that from inside of the app, and then the audio tour will play. Unlike the audio tour apps that we've been using at other parks, this one is not synchronized, I believe, to GPS, so I think you have to actually trigger and start playing it when you get to those designated spots. Now, the Park Service has made this easier because there are labels with the numbers that correspond to the audio tour all along the road.
Smell that?
Rotten eggs means we're in the right spot. These are a few of Katelyn's favorite things.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so excited. Look at this. I just love the boiling mud. It's so cool. Woo! Oh my gosh, you get so close to it. So this is Sulfur Works, and this area has 3 of the 4 geothermal features. So there are fumaroles, there are springs, and there are mud pots.
Like that.
Wow! Okay, they have a recipe for a mud pot. So your ingredients are heat, hydrogen sulfide gas, water, a thick layer of volcanic rock, heat-loving microorganisms, and minerals. And this is how you make a mud pot. So you let the volcanic heat and gases rise through the Earth's crust. Then boil water deep underground and add to gases. Step 3, process mixture by forcing upward through cracks in the volcanic rock. And step 4, simmer in a large pot on the Earth's surface, adding water from rain and snow to make a sloppy consistency. Cook until acid breaks down volcanic rock into clay, garnish with minerals for added color. And there you have it. That's the recipe for a mud pot. So when you leave the Southwest Visitor Center, Sulfur Works is the first geothermal area that you will come to, but it's just a little bit of teaser for what lies ahead. The Sulfur Works parking lot shares a parking lot for Ridge Lakes Trail, and if you come a little bit up the Ridge Lakes Trail, you can get an overview above Sulfur Works.
Yeah, look at all these ferns.
It's pretty. It's so lush over on this side.
It really is. I don't know if I've ever seen this kind of a landscape where you have like ferns going all the way up the hills and they meet the trees. Hey, you really don't have to walk far at all and you get a great view.
This is Emerald Lake. It's a very popular spot because it's right off the main park road. There's a parking area and then you're right here. The color is beautiful. We also learned a kind of sad story from the National Park Service app. There used to be an endemic species of frog here called the Cascade Frog. Well, unfortunately, at one point in time, rangers brought in rainbow trout and stocked this here before we fully understood that that kind of thing was bad. And the Cascade Frog could not withstand the changes to its environment caused by the rainbow trout. So it eventually died off, and there's no trout and no frogs here left anymore. On the sign, there's something that talks about how there is still an endemic flower species here, but it's not listed on the sign because they don't want people to destroy it, which is understandable.
Katelyn, what you got there?
My picnic. I've been really into picnics recently, so we've been packing our lunch and enjoying it in beautiful spots throughout the national parks, which has been a lot of fun. Wow. Okay, this is one of the most picturesque picnic spots. The color of the water is so vibrant.
Okay, what you got?
Okay, we've got some delicious chef salads. Look at this. Chopped up a bunch of good stuff this morning. So we got like bell pepper, avocado, hard-boiled egg, tomato, turkey, spinach. It's gonna be great. And I forgot forks, but luckily at the visitor center and the cafe they had some forks. Lake Helen is so beautiful, and you have Lassen Peak right here. It's an alpine lake that's about 100 feet deep. The water is so crystal clear right now. You can swim in it if you're feeling very brave, but it does stay very cold year round. Okay, yes, there is a reason that I just filmed Howard going into the pit toilets, and because I feel like this needs to be said. Lassen Volcanic has the best smelling pit toilets of any national park we've been to. I don't know what their secret is, but it's like coconut and it smells actually really good. It's bizarre, but I just felt like you needed to know that.
Man, I feel like I've been transported to like a beachside
Right?
magnificence. Like, I'm kind of getting a hint of like suntan lotion. I don't know. But that's some good stuff. All right, we are about to do a hike to lead to another hike. Because we're about to hike 1 mile to the basin overlook. From the basin overlook, that's what's going to take us to the fry pan and to the boardwalk so we can see all the geothermal coolness.
Yeah, that was attached to that. Okay, this is a really cool phenomenon that we noticed driving throughout the park. They're everywhere. These trees that grow out and then straight up. We aren't sure yet why this happens. Howard had a really good hypothesis that perhaps it's erosion. So they start growing one way, like the earth falls out and then they go up. It could be wind. I don't know. If you know why this happens, let us know. Otherwise, we're gonna do some digging and try to figure it out. But it's really cool looking. Just a few steps away, there's this massive one. Look how thick that trunk is. It's pretty hard to imagine that there was an even bigger volcano and mountain peak here. And the park does a really good job both through the park film and on signage to show what that would have looked like. So on this sign here, about halfway up the Bumpass Trail, you can see where Broke Off Mountain is, and then they have a depiction of how tall that volcano and that peak used to be. Okay, I can officially see the basin and the boardwalk, and it's beautiful from up here. The trail in was gorgeous too. You're getting great views of all of the peaks, and then you come here, we're gonna hike down and see all the geothermals.
Just a quick observation. Yellowstone also has geothermal, of course. In fact, it's probably the most famous of the parks that has geothermal. Did you know that Lassen is the other one? There's only 2 in the entire National Park Service that actually has geothermals. Another quick observation. This park, unlike Yellowstone has these really cutesy kind of caricatures of like, be careful when you're around the geothermals. Here, pull no punches. They're actually showing people who are wounded by the geothermals. It is definitely a different level here, and I applaud it.
And in case you're wondering how Bumpass Hell got its name, it's because of somebody who hurt himself here. So Kendall Bumpass was a guide in the area, taking people through, and didn't follow his own advice, accidentally stepped through a geothermal feature and had severe burns up half of his body. So I'm assuming, obviously, the Bumpass came from his name, but then it's because he went through hell here in Bumpass Hell.
Sure. In this 16-acre space, there are more than 75 fumaroles, hot springs, and mud pots just in this small little tiny area.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So Lassen Volcanic National Park is open through the winter, but you have to be like an avid snowshoer or skier. But a lot of people come here who enjoy winter activities. The exception is this area. It is not open until the entire area is free of snow. And that's obviously from a safety standpoint, because think about it, if the entire area is covered in feet of snow, you wouldn't know where the boardwalk is, and you could step in a very unsafe area. We found an even higher bird's eye view of the entire Bumpass Hell area. So go past the first overlook, the trail continues to the right, and then that will bring you up on the back side up here. You can't help but notice all of the burned trees when you visit Lassen Volcanic. We're walking through a burned area right now on our way out to Cold Boiling Lake, and all of this is the result of a massive fire in 2021 called the Dixie Fire.
The Dixie Fire impacted a good majority of the park, close to 70% or more.
The human-caused fire began on July 13th, 2021, after a tree fell onto a power line. About 3 weeks later, it entered park boundaries. But because of fire suppression efforts before and during the fire, most structures and popular visitor areas were spared. It was finally contained in late October after burning a total of 1 million acres, with 73,000 of those here within the park. Once you emerge from all of the burned trees that you're walking through, you see this beautiful, lush green meadow. And this is Cold Boiling Lake, which is kind of a funny name, right? Like cold and boiling. But sure enough, it is still bubbling up. This is a dying geothermal area, but it's still a little bit active here under the lake. So we're at the devastated area Interpretive Trail, and it's very neat for a couple of reasons. One of which is that this is an accessible paved loop trail. The other is that there are interpretive signs that are going to teach us all about the eruption of 1915 and 1916. Okay, point of correction, the entire loop isn't paved, but it is very hard packed and very wide. There's also an audio description, so you can push a button and listen to the story and the intro panel right at the beginning of the trail.
A "You Are Here" marker is just right of the center.
Even better, there's descriptive audio at each panel along the trail. Right, this stop is really cool because there's an actual photograph that B.F. Loomis took. He was the one who photographed one of those eruptions, I think back in 1914. And you can see this rock is still here. So this was a hot rock that was blown by one of those eruptions. But the difference is all of these trees have grown up. So if you peek through, you can still see the top of the volcano, but all of this has grown up around it ever since. So we're camped over in the Manzanita Lake area, and this is definitely a place that has a lot of history and is very important to the development of the national park and those eruptions back in 1914, 15, and 16. So B.F. Loomis became famous in this area for capturing the photos of the eruption. He took a series of 6 photographs, and those are displayed here in the museum behind me, which he actually constructed. It's right across from his house where he lived here along Manzanita Lake. It's in part thanks to these photos that we get to enjoy Lassen Volcanic as a national park today. The series brought widespread attention to the area, which helped support the campaign to establish this area as a national park. It received its designation in 1916, and in 1929, the Loomises donated their 40 acres of land at Manzanita Lake, the museum, and an adjacent seismograph building to the park. Over the course of several years, BF and his wife also donated his impressive photograph collection, which truly helped to put this incredibly diverse area on the map. Coming up on National Parks with the Newstates, we're continuing north to check off Oregon's only national park, Crater Lake, before continuing on to Washington State for the incredible beauty of Mount Rainier and the magical Olympic National Parks. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you soon.